Hello, my I'm here with Barbara Kaalberg, the creator of Divinity. How you doing, Barbara?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Yeah, sorry about all the technical difficulties. So I guess let's start off and you tell us about the book, then we'll go from there.
Okay. I've been an inker for 30 years. I've worked for a lot of different people. Spent a lot of time working for DC in the 1990s. And somewhere along the line, I mean, I'm 30 years into inking. I figured it was time for me to push my creative envelope and create my own book. About a year or so ago, I came up with the idea for Divinity, which is about an 11-year-old girl who, after a near-death experience, she develops healing abilities. And after the mysterious death of her parents, her older brother, 13 years older, he's 24, he's a Marine, he's given a hardship discharge to come home and care for her. And he's very suspicious about the death of his parents. So he goes to discover it, and what he discovers is that his young sister has got this mysterious healing ability, and that's probably what led to the death of their parents, which is proved later on that there's an evil cabal that's out to get their hands on her. So he has to protect her and go on the run with her. That's kind of the premise that we started with. And I took this to Roland about a year and a half ago, and he said, sure, that sounds great, let's run with it. So he told me to go out and find my own penciler, which was kind of a daunting prospect. I've never actually rounded up talent before. Like I said, this is really pushing the envelope for me. I've just been comfortably sitting in my own little niche for 30 years. So I started scouring the internet for different pencilers, and while I was doing this, I got this friend request on Facebook from this Mexican artist. His name is Alex Sarabia, and he private messaged me and said, I'm a huge fan of yours, and one of the things I'd like to do is work with you someday. My fondest wish is to work with you someday. So I was intrigued, and I went to his Facebook page, and I looked at his pencils, and I'm like, oh my God, I was totally blown away. I private messaged him back. I said, how about right now? So I rounded up my penciler. I brought on, Roland had me bring R.A. Jones on board, because while I had the ideas and the plot and the characters, and I'm a fairly good writer, I've never scripted a comic book in my life. So I needed help with that. So R.A. came on board. He threw out some more ideas, some fantastic ideas, and it just meshed and it came together. And I think it's a fantastic book. We've got we'll have them going on the run, sort of like an on the road type of book, and hooking up with a fellow Marine of Zach, that's the older brother. Her name is Olivia. She'll be coming on board in issue number 2 to help out. Divinity is the little 11-year-old girl. We call her Vinny, Zach and Vinny. And the whole idea is, what would your life be like if you suddenly could heal? And most people will think, oh, wow, that would be awesome. That'd be great. But would it really? Think about it. Would it really? If people found out that you could heal, what would they do to utilize your talent? You wouldn't even be able to step out the front door. There'd be lines of people waiting to mob you as soon as you stepped out the front door.
Right, or the government trying to take you. There's a lot you could do with that. I can't wait to see how this adventure unfolds. Where can people get the book now?
The Kickstarter starts Tuesday, May 12th, this coming Tuesday, and there's a link on my Facebook page. My Facebook page is public. I'm the only Barbara Kaalberg on the internet, so it's Kaalberg. That's Kaalberg. Just look me up, or else just Google Divinity Kickstarter next Tuesday, and it'll pop right up. I guarantee you.
I'll put a link in the description to help people get there quicker.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So for the people that don't know what an inker is, can you tell us the job of an inker in a comic book?
Sure.
All right.
Most pencilers, a lot of pencilers these days ink their own works, but it used to be that almost all pencilers had inkers. And these days, some pencilers still do utilize inkers. All pencilers can't ink their own work if they're not comfortable with it. They sketch the comic book out with pencils. They'll sketch it out either digitally or on paper. Sometimes it's just rough sketches, and that's called embellishing when the inker finishes off the entire idea. But most of them are pretty fully realized. And then it's turned over to an inker, and the inker lays down the black lines, the ink lines. And when I get the pages, the physical pages, I ink right straight on the physical artwork, and then I erase whatever pencils are left. When I get it digitally, I will download the digital pencils on a computer. I'll turn those pencils blue, called non-repro blue, and I'll print those blue pencils out on 500-pound Strathmore on a Brother Pro, which is one of the few printers that can handle that kind of weighted paper. Then I'll ink it, and I don't know if you can see behind me, but this is my drawing. I'll ink it with my tools, brushes.
Do you have, excuse me, do you have like special markers, or is it just like a Sharpie, or?
Well, I ink old school for the most part. About 75% of my pages are inked with a brush and India ink, a good old-fashioned Winsor & Newton or a Raphael No. 2 and India ink.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
And I'm in the process of inking Cat and Mouse right now.
Oh my goodness.
That's the cover for Cat and Mouse No. 4. So this is what I'm working on today. And this is all by hand.
That's amazing right there.
And you can see the blue that's the pencils, and then I've interpreted the pencils, and Dean Zachary is kind of very sketchy, so I have to translate those sketchy marks into solid lines, and then I have to add weight and depth, gravity, special effects, and bring that page to life. And then once that's finished, I also use some pens. I'll use micron pens like that, and Pigma pens too. But I'd say about 75% of the page is laid down with a brush first, and then I finish it off with the pens. And once that's done, then I will take the page, I'll scan it back into my computer, and I'll use a threshold tool to drop the blue out, so that all that's left behind is the black, and then that's scanned onto the publisher.
Wow, that's amazing. Which one do you prefer? Do you prefer physical or digital?
I used to only prefer the physical, the old school. Back in the day, especially working for DC and Marvel, I would send the physical pages through FedEx back to Marvel and DC. But the only downside to that is that they would send, after they were done printing it, they would send 2/3 of the physical pages to the penciler and only 1/3 back to the inker to sell at conventions or whatever. Nowadays, if I get it digitally and I print it out on blue, I keep 100% of my artwork.
Right.
So that's the upside to printing on blue lines. The downside to printing on blue lines is that if you've got a penciler who pencils really, really fine, when you print out on blue, some of those fine lines will drop out and you can't see everything. And you're squinting at the page trying to make out what those lines are in very faint blue. So I always also print out the original pencils in dark. like that, so that I can have constant reference to look back and forth, because my old eyes don't pick up those light blue lines so much anymore.
Right. Do you have a do you sell your old art pages? Do you have a website or anything?
I don't sell them over the online. I usually save them to sell at conventions.
Okay.
So I have something to sell at conventions when I go out to meet my fans. If I sold it all online, then I'd have nothing left when I actually meet my fans face to face.
Right. Was there any convention that you're going to that you want to tell us about? I know the world's kind of crazy.
The world is crazy. I was scheduled to do all of the Wizard Worlds this year. They were actually sponsoring me this year, and obviously that's kind of gone crazy. I'm hoping that maybe things will settle down. I'm not doing. I was supposed to do Philly the first week in June. That's not going to happen. St. Louis was the first week in June. That's not going to happen. Philly was supposed to be the second weekend in June, and that's not going to happen. But maybe by the time the Chicago one rolls around, the world will be in a better place. And there's dozens of smaller shows, local shows through RockCon and MightyCon that have been canceled. Those are local ones that take place within, a 4-hour driving distance of here around Madison or the Quad Cities or down by Chicago or Peoria, Illinois, or Iowa. In Iowa, I drive to those all the time, but all of those currently have been canceled as well.
All right.
When I get back to traveling again, I'll be posting my appearances on Facebook.
All right, and y'all stay tuned so you can go check out Barbara's work. Could you tell us, I know you inked for Marvel and DC. Could you tell us what characters you done for Marvel and DC?
Sure. I actually spent 2.5 years on Impulse. Spent 2 years on it with Craig Rousseau and Bill Messner-Loebs. I was actually under contract for that. It was the only time I ever had a contract. I'm usually a freelancer. Then I spent 6 months on it when they brought on the new team, Ethan Van Sciver. And that was back in the 90s. I also did quite a few Green Lanterns, 17 issues of Primal Force. I was on that from the very, very conception of the book. Flew out to New York for talks on, how we wanted the character development and stuff like that. And I was the only artist that spent the entire run on that book, I believe. I had several pencilers, but I was on every single issue of that until it was canceled. Did some Hawkman. I'm having a hard time remembering that. It was a long time ago. I've done like 200 books. So.
Oh wow. Who's your favorite? A little easier question. Who's your favorite to ink?
Oh gosh. That's a really hard question because I have several favorites. I mean, I love inking over Dean Zachary. I've inked over Mel Ruby, Jeff Johnson, Derek Robertson. Oh gosh. I can't even remember everybody I've inked over at this point. There's been dozens of pencilers that I've inked over.
And let's go back to Divinity. What gave you the inspiration for this book?
Oddly enough, my story they come through dreams. I mean, I'll have something rolling around in my head for a while, bits and pieces of ideas that are subconsciously just like filtering around in my subconscious for a long time. And then one night I'll fall asleep and I'll have a super vivid dream and it will all just come together. And when I wake up, I actually remember it and it's all there. The whole plot, the story, the characters, everything is there. And I will get up and I will write it down. And I've done that several times, but this is the first time I've ever had the guts to actually put it forth and say, I'd like to do a book, So it's a little bit of an odd way to do it, but maybe it just takes me relaxing and letting go for it to actually come out,
Right.
But I felt that it was a unique perspective because you've got a little girl who can heal, and I didn't need any super villains. I didn't need spandex. I just needed the real world because God knows the real world is evil enough, you know. So I've got her and her older brother and her brother's friend, and that's all I really needed for a basis for a story.
Yeah, from what I've seen, it looks great. I'm excited.
Well, thank you. I also like the fact that we could throw in a personal twist because there's not just the fighting and the intrigue and the adventure. There's a story about a brother and a sister who really don't know each other that well. I mean, the girl is 11, Divinity is 11, and Zach is 24. They're they're half siblings, and they barely know each other. And then they're thrown together, and you have a tween and a Marine. I mean, and that's just a volatile mix right there. And somewhere along the way, they need to learn how to become a family, which is also going to be an underlying plot to the whole thing. So it's not just going to be fighting.
All right. And how long is their story arc going to span across? How many issues?
Well, the first story arc is going to be 4 issues, and we're hoping that it goes over well because I can see tons of plot lines, storylines in my head. Just the first 4 issues is just basically an establishing story and telling how they have to go on the run. And after the end of the 4th issue, it resolves the first storyline, but now they're on the run, and you want to know what happens next.
Oh yeah, I've thought of a couple ideas. Just telling me about it.
Oh yeah, I've got ideas for religious fanatics and pharmaceutical companies and evil governments and dictators who want to get their. Oh yeah, it's just endless.
Mm-hmm. Is Divinity going to run into any other Silverline books?
Not in the first 4 issues, but that's definitely a possibility. I can absolutely see her running into Cat and Mouse down in New Orleans.
All right, yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Let's see. I think this is about it. Do you have any shout outs or do you want to thank anybody?
I want to thank Roland. I've been with Silverline. Silverline started as just doing Cat and Mouse at the beginning. It was just Dean, Zachary, Roland, and myself, and it has just grown in leaps and bounds. We're an independent little company that likes to do wonderful books, individual books, graphic novels, and we are putting out some amazing books. We've got a lot of books lined up to do. So please look it out, silverline.com, and try to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. My Twitter handle is BJKLBRG, so please stop by and friend me on Facebook or Twitter.
All right. Well, thank you, Barbara, for taking the time to talk with us.